Hello, you guys. Welcome to Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson. I am your host, Dr. Jefferson, and tonight we're going to have a comprehensive conversation about all of these different discussions that we've engaged in over the past couple of months. I will not have the producer available at all times. So I will ask right now that the moderators come in and do their jobs throughout the show. I will try to be as brief as possible tonight. I want to kind of keep the show at the 2-hour mark. Okay. So we've had some interesting and comprehensive conversations about elephants that are in the community rooms, in the spaces that we share with others, and so many other expansive spaces. And we're going to kind of bring it all in, if you will, in discussions tonight. So we may feature a couple of videos that we've previously looked at or whatever, and we may just bring those things up in discussions. However, I want you guys to be aware that this channel is about accountability. Therefore, I use the content, whatever content we end up viewing over the course of this show, to educate, elevate, expand not only the knowledge base, but awareness, and to have these difficult conversations around accountability as they relate to the topics that are brought up in those different videos. So we'll have a conversation about a couple of different content creators, and we'll bring it all in. So I'm going to go ahead and play my disclaimers and get all that stuff out of the way, and I will be right back in a couple of minutes here. See you soon. So, hello again, you guys. Welcome to Life Discussion with Dr. Jefferson. If you are a first-time viewer here, Just know that this is an accountability channel. We have very difficult conversations around the different topics that influence the Black, brown, melanated community in America and abroad. And on this channel, we review a ton of content. On our last show, we featured a conversation around submission, and that's the video that you guys were just seeing. I do want to kind of push his channel, Mr. He Got Game. I really feel like he is a really great and inspirational, very positive person for you guys to follow. So go over there and subscribe to his channel. If you're viewing my content for the first time, be sure to turn the notifications on after you subscribe. Do your due diligence, right? And if you are looking for ways to support the channel, make sure that you guys check out my anchor.fm, which is where all of my podcasts are featured, and reviews. If you guys are on the go and listening to it or whatever, not necessarily watching it, I can be heard on all channels where podcasts are found, but that is where you can contribute your monthly contributions to the channel and support us here at Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson. Okay. So now that all of that is out of the way, how are you guys doing? Shout out to the chat. You guys are always amazing. As you guys come in, be sure and speak. Let me know you're out there. Don't be awkward and just creepy in general, just spying without any intention, purpose, any of that, that can kind of make things a little bit weird. So, like I said, we've reviewed a ton of content the last couple of months or so. Hey, Rush, how are you? And we've talked about a lot of things. We've talked about the courtship or dating principles as they've evolved. We've talked about things that affect the way that this generation of young people decide to invest in or move away from traditional relationships or traditional ideology around building relationships and dating. We talked about the evolution of feminism and its impact on the overall consensus of the Black community. We've talked about some of the very difficult to sit with perspectives and views of the very controversial content creator, Kevin Samuels. We've talked about some of the very difficult and very, challenging to sit with perceptions of Cynthia G. And I haven't given you guys a thorough review on Cynthia G yet. The jury's still out, but it's coming. It's coming. We've also talked about Tanya TKO, Nyla Speaks. We've reviewed the content of several content creators that are a part of the melanated community, and we've talked about the way some of their content has impacted the viewpoints of young people, right, in America. We've talked about the way respectability politics of the Black community has kind of gone astray. We've even talked about social justice issues, inner city crime and violence, and those things. So we've gauged a lot of topics over the last couple of months. And I feel like the channel is still growing. I see a lot of the content that you guys are submitting to me in my email, also in my inbox. And I appreciate all of the love, all of the support, the consistency of the followers who are definitely in this fight to discover what it is that's going on in our community and reconstruct and rebuild if we can. You guys saw a couple of the very important talking points that I want to touch on tonight, kind of in the preview of the show as you guys were listening to the intro music and seeing the disclaimers and things like that. I want to jump into where we're going or the directionality that all of these accountability discussions intend to kind of impress upon people, especially on your mindsets as you're going about your regular day, right? The overall consensus is that dating does not yield a high return towards marital investment. in the Black community. As a result, that says a lot of things about longitudinally where we will be as a collective. Okay. A couple of conversations that I've been having with colleagues, fellow content creators, and that kind of stuff kind of led to me including a couple of other content creators on this particular thread. Okay. Specifically, Kwame Brown and Boyce Watkins. Now, I know I've talked a little bit about Boyce Watkins. I know we've talked a little bit about Umar Johnson and some of his rhetoric. We've talked about a lot of these folks, but we've not really held those two people accountable, because I felt like with the Kwame Brown situation, a lot of the issues, that I've seen other content creators bring about Kwame Brown, to me, they just weren't justified. You know, the way a person runs their household or runs their business is their business. And I do feel like there is an issue around trust as it relates to the investment that we have in our own community. And I want to talk about that too. So I don't feel like it's unjustified. A lot of those questions that other content creators have brought to, to the forefront and had conversations about around Kwame Brown's investment in his projects that he's talked about, because I feel like he's not the same person that we keep holding him to the comparison dynamics of, which would be Umar Johnson. Okay. So I think that a lot of people don't understand the impact of financial congruence, investments, and how you spend your money, how you operate a business, how you operate nonprofits and that kind of stuff. And I feel like sometimes that drives people to get very suspicious. But I also feel like the primary issue is what I talked about before. And that's the fact that there is a lack of trust, right? So if not for nothing, this guy, Kevin Samuels, has been a slap in the face of a shifting Black American dynamic. Okay. And I say it's a slap in the face because what happened is quite a bit ago, when people had traditional relationships in our culture, those relationships didn't always yield ideal outcomes for the females who were a party to those relationships with those men. And those men would sometimes be very distrustful, but women would be very optimistic and very trusting and very yielding and very submissive. And in return, they just didn't get what they were hoping their investment would yield. And I think that we have to have the conversation about how that contributes to the overall power dynamic and struggle that we saw when we saw this third and fourth wave of feminism come about, okay? And the way it's impacted American women. And really, just going to be honest, women in other countries too, because they're continuing to evolve and they're continuing to divest from old school principles. So trust has a lot to do with where we put our faith. Okay. So if we've seen examples, human beings, regardless of how much religious conditioning we try to put into people, human beings are about proof in the pudding. We're about seeing, and seeing is believing for us. Okay. And sometimes we see things and we don't want to believe it. So we tell ourselves pretty little lies that unseat us in our discomfort and reseat us in comfortability politics. And I feel like that's where Kevin Samuels has come into play. So he talks about the disillusionment or delusions that he calls it of Black women. And he'll say, okay, these Black women feel like they can, pull a Black man that's of high value, according to Kevin Samuels' high value politics, right? And they feel like their conformity, what does he call it? What are his three for women? It's not submission. That's another word he uses. I'll have it in a bit. It'll come to me. But he wants women to be more silent and subservient, more naturally submissive. Oh, that's cooperative. That's the word that he uses. He wants women to be fit, feminine, and cooperative, right? So some of those dynamics, when you talk about some of the stressors that Black women go through on a day to day, even when you talk about some of the stressors that Black men go through on a day to day, that leads to depression, withdrawal, isolation, ultimately that leads to substance use, over using substances or substance abuse, right? And ultimately to suicide in our community, which is something that we don't address often enough. These distresses can prevent people from stepping into places and spaces where they are their best versions of self. And I do feel like that's a very difficult conversation for us to have as a community, because it is something that makes us uncomfortable. And it is something that speaks to the things that are not necessarily valued, right? But I do want to put out there that I don't feel like Kevin Samuels is right in a lot of his rhetoric, simply because these things are only surface level congruence or surface level attractions. And although men tend to be very visual creatures, I would hope a man who is about his money, which is a point of contention for Kevin Samuels when he talks about the high value man, I would hope that a man about his money is interested in other things when it comes to long-term investments yielding a positive return. Okay. But who knows? I don't know. I'm not a man. I don't have a penis. Right. So people like him have blown up because they're having the difficult conversations and facing some of these things that look like they're incongruent with the outcomes that Black women are saying they would very much like to be a part of or very much like to acquire. Okay. So if a Black woman says that she wants a man who is making a set amount of money, because that's a point of contention for her, that's important for her, and this Black woman is overweight according to the BMI standard, that index from 99, right? Then she's lower value than another woman who wants that same thing. As a result, Kevin Samuels has this mindset that women should be in competition with one another for those positions with that same subset of men. Now, a lot of folks have bought into discussion that it's illogical. Personally, I feel like it's not necessarily pragmatic to the type of outcomes that these men desire. When we're talking about the level of cooperation of the woman, when we're talking about the level of submission of a woman, I don't think it's necessarily conducive if he wants a woman who is going to be aggressive and feeling like she's in direct competition with other females for his affections, love, admiration, and that stuff. Okay. I think that men are naturally hunters. I think men know what it is that they want. And I feel like when we start taking this away from a man, it takes more than power away from them. It unseats them in their natural purpose in life. And it can make a relationship really uncomfortable. We see an abundance of young women proposing to men and not allowing men to kind of step into that position and make the proposal to a woman when he's ready and he feels like she's someone that he's interested in that way. I feel like we are folks that we're going further off the spectrum when it comes to making the investments that are necessary for us to acquire the outcomes that we're seeking. And I think that we've just got to do a better job at aligning ourselves with our purpose and intentionally doing the things that we know work to acquire the types of outcomes that we seek. So when listening to folks like Kevin Samuels, I feel like you guys should be more selective, right? As to what settles into your energy center. Because I feel like he's got a lot of value to bring to the table and up for discussion. And that's how I feel. Hey, the official urban therapist, how are you? But I feel like oftentimes, because he is so attracted to that attention that he's getting from his following, his information becomes more inconsistent. And I feel like it becomes more irrelevant to the outcome that we're trying to acquire for the Black community. I feel like more people are having the difficult conversation about the nature and the state of the Black community and its health and congruence as a culture. Right now, we are as acculturated as one could ever get. When I ask people, what do you consider to be Black American culture? They're completely lost, or they'll give me an answer that is written with excuses about how white supremacy took this, stole this from this, and all of that, right? So what that shows me is that you have selected a part of history that resonated with said vicarious trauma that other Black people have decided to seat themselves in. Walk in, accept, embrace as their truth, and then negate to deal with the overarching difficult issues of acquiring more positive outcomes, right? Positive outcomes that have been laid, the foundation have been laid for us, right? By our predecessors. But we can't see that because we're so blinded by the negative things or the negative connotations associated with what Black culture is. As a result, we have moved to remove famous statues from history. We have decided to forget those infamous Black free men who had recently bought their slavery off the books and fought in these wars that are definitely these statutes stand for. We've negated to be responsible people who are carrying on a legacy that is so strong, so influential, so powerful, so elevational. We've done that because we've decided to live in the shadows. We've decided to live in the excuses. We've not decided to walk in our purpose. We've not decided to walk in faith. We've not decided to invest in love. We've not decided to invest in hope. We've not decided to be something better than what we see in our here and now. As a result, move in a different way here and now so that our future can be brighter, right? We can reach our capacity. We've decided to not do that. Instead, we've decided to be people who invite negative energy into our center. And as a result, we create more negative energy to put out there. And we continue to move, welcome, invite, and participate in things that degrade the culture of Black America. And we don't even know that we were doing this. That's the reality. That's the reality. So what I would like to do, I would like to invite you guys to embark upon a new type of action, a new type of mindset, seat yourself in a new type of energy, reposition yourself in a new type of congruence. That says that you realize more now than any time in your life that these negative things that are a part of our history have happened. These things have transpired. These negative patterns of behaviors that our Black women have adopted in regard to their sexual expression and sexuality, these negative behaviors that our Black men have adopted in regard to their sexual expression and their sexuality. We understand that all of these things have happened, but we also understand that it is okay for us to dream. It is okay for us to be. It is okay for us to grow. It is okay for us to seed a possible seed that gives light to a brighter tomorrow, that involves us investing instead of divesting from our culture by way of only, calling a thing, having the difficult conversations. And as a result of realizing what things are currently still evolving, need to be reconstructed, and then start doing the work. I think that when we are people who are more interested in the positive connotations of life we're more willing to do the work, you know? So let's talk about this. So I'll get to this one first. Our community is not as protective of our culture. So I want to know, for you, Tuan, what would you define as Black American culture? And I know that we've had this discussion a couple of times on this show, but I think that it evolves with every discussion because I think more people are push to go out and redefine purpose, value systems, trust, love, fidelity, the possibilities therein, right? Their previous relationships, the lessons that they learned about themselves, the lessons they learned about the people that they're connected to, the lessons they've learned from their experience as a whole, right? So that they can redefine what their subculture of the overarching culture is for them. So that's what I want you to use to kind of gauge this question, because this one can be a kind of difficult area to gauge simply because I feel like, given history where we see books, articles, and all movies, fictional and non-fictional accounts of things that have happened over the course of our history, as people who initially came to this country, I feel like we get the negative distortions, and we only get the negative distortions from those sources. But if we continue to evolve, right? If we look at your ancestry, if we look at where our ancestors evolved into based off of even those negative connotations, right? If we're seating ourselves and looking at Black culture for the greatness that's therein, what we will find is that, damn, if we came here as nothing, if we came here as slaves, if we came here without rights, right? If those are our ancestors, when we look at where we are right now, right? If we're only looking at the positive and rising above the negative, because the reality is, even if we did weigh in both the positive and the negative, we'd still be winning. Just going to put it out there, because if we go from that to where we are now, we have moved ourselves and repositioned ourselves in spaces where our voice counts, our dollar counts, our movements count, our politics counts. So the more, if we are people who start to now recognize that worth for what it is, Black people, Black American people become the absolute most powerful people on the earth. And I don't think that that's a truth that we've sat with yet. I don't think that Black people have sat with that truth. As long as we continue to tell ourselves that our voice doesn't count, our vote doesn't count, our movements don't count, these things don't count, this right here, those mindsets will continue to put us in places to where other communities, other people can seat themselves above us and continue to rise above, because we will continue to squabble amongst each other. We will continue to keep each other down. We will continue to communicate in ways that are degrading ourselves, and therefore move in ways that not only currently that continue to perpetuate that same cycle of degradation. And so that's what I want you to give me from you. Right, right. And I want to get to yours. This comment about all other ethnic groups and racial groups having their ancestral and national cultures to practice, right, is a really interesting one to me. So give me clarity before I go in and I talk about this topic, because this is the show where we're going to break that one down. And these types of mindsets are going to go in the trash column, or as Cynthia G calls it, struggle, 3 trash bags, struggle dusties, right? I don't know. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. So let's talk about the void that you see there before I dissect that. It is quite complex. It is quite difficult to gauge, but we're gonna delve into it today. Yeah, are you going live tonight? Okay, cool. That means you can come on here and share your perspective. Let's see. So Jessica says Black culture is making and remaking itself because its foundation was ripped apart. It is hard to know what you do not know. Listen, you hit the nail right on the head with that one. And if you guys read the description, I talk about this. I talk about how trust has a huge component in whether or not we invest or continue to move into a hopeful position for our culture. So our history is unlike any other. There are a lot of dynamics to define it. Our standards are not organized like they should. Our structure is not a solid foundation. I'm with that. I'm totally with that. So I'm going to talk about this comment right here. We're going to dissect this, because comments like this comment right here are the very comments that people have used forever, especially people who are in support of white supremacy. They use these forever. Have used these forever as a means to continue to oppress the minds of Black and brown and melanated people. So I'm going to dissect it so that people who watch this video can move into a place to reposition themselves appropriately in response to seeing comments like this, even taking this perception. So if you talk about the evolution of Black American people, because we are not African American people, that's the first thing that I want to clarify as it applies to our culture. Black American people are descendants of African American people who are descendants of African and indigenous people. Okay. So that means African and indigenous people. So those African and indigenous people that are original people from this particular land already prior to the colonization of this land, we have a very wealthy culture. As we've evolved into the post-integrative states of segregation, even, okay, so if we went from the African-American descendant, right, from segregation to integration, where we became Afro-American or Black American people, that is where our history starts. So this would be the days of Dr. King, so the 1950s, and the descendants of people that are children of those people born between 1930 and 1950. Those are the people who are considered to be Black American versus African American, okay? Simply because slavery and direct descendants of slaves, so that means children of slaves who were brought here from the African lands, those people are now African American, right? And then their children will become Afro American, whose children will become Black American, because you get more and more diluted as we move along the lines. So if we went all the way back to descendant history of those people who were slaves, who came here and they had children born into slavery here in this land, who eventually ended up being free men here in this land, who eventually had children and their children's children who were free men here in this land, who had rights here in this land, even though they were brought here as slaves here in this land with no rights here in this land. If we just took that part alone, what that says is that whoever came over here with no rights as a slave are the people who have elevated above the system that they are a part of, the system that oppressed them. And so as a result of that, just that alone, just that one component alone, it says that they're one step ahead and one step above their oppressors, because people who oppress people don't intend to not oppress them anymore. That's not their intention at all. They keep the same energy because the oppression of those said people benefits them until it doesn't, because it no longer exists. So if the oppression of those people was acquired by those people themselves, they outmaneuvered their oppressors. So if we are people who are descendants of people who outmaneuvered their oppressors, not only in doing that, right? We were responsible for cultivating and shaping their culture for years. So they are of us. We are not of them. Okay? So that's the one thing that I want you guys to understand. That is one of the main reasons I think they say so many in America, the Black woman is God. That comes from the construct that the Black woman was responsible for so many things. The Black woman was responsible for cooking and feeding her slave owner, right? The Black woman was responsible for teaching and cultivating the education and mindsets and culture of her slave owner's children. So our slave owners, our oppressors, were systematically manipulated into being our lessers. That is what the Black woman did. As a result, the Black woman went back to those same shacks, molded, cultivated, fed, gave energy to, light to, strength to, encouragement to her Black man, who later on went on to develop Wall Street for Black America. This is what we are descendants of. So all of that negative rhetoric, all of that Jim Crow rhetoric, all of that hogwash that doesn't lead to the type of outcomes that we see right here today before us, that stuff is irrelevant for a couple of reasons. It doesn't hold any light to the flame that continues to burn when we look at the constant evolution of the Black American woman, the Black American man. So divesting from something that you've built, and we have a long history of continuing to pour into, continuing to build, even in light of disappointment, even in light of failures, even in light of coming up a little bit shorter than what we had expected, we continue to build, we continue to cultivate, we continue to grow, we continue to thrive, we continue to fight. And if we decide to give up now, what does that say about the honor? What does that say about the respect? What does that say about the dignity? What does that say about the value of the culture that was shaped and built for us, that was laid out for us to continue to expand upon by our ancestors? If we become people who now digress completely in this fight, and we decide to buy into mindsets of those people who sought to oppress us, because this is the mindset. We have no culture. Our culture was given to us. It was given to us by our ancestors. It said that we did not have to speak our native tongue in order to exist and coexist with those people that we will now rise above. Our culture was given to us. It said that we did not have to live and scrape for provisions, because we would build our own financial stronghold. it said that even after our financial stronghold had burned to the ground, we would continue to fight, and we would continue to overcome, and we will continue to build within our community. We would continue to procreate. We would continue to live within the means that we currently have so that we can elevate above and save a little bit here so we can build again. That is what we come from, people. The bonds of trust have slowly been broken in our community because we have an issue with understanding the impact of our history. We have an issue with dissecting the different components of history as it relates to American people in general and its effect on our here and now. We have a history with accepting and navigating through the discoveries in which our traumas stand to yield to us. Instead of embracing our trauma, we'd rather let it oppress us and continue to hold us back and help us develop mindsets that say we are lesser than. And that's just not true. So let's look at some of your comments. Okay, I think I looked at that one. We've done that for ages as well. So Black America does have credit for Black Wall Street because you're descendants of the African American people built the Black American people. Black American people became a point of contention after those people who were direct ascendants died off. And Black America is what thrived thereafter. That's what lived thereafter. So that would be your Malcolm X's, your Dr. King, those folks. Johnny Carr. Okay. Retype that, Jessica. I don't understand what you're saying. Okay, so historically, Jim Crow isn't irrelevant. It was a real powerful part of life. It wasn't a minor footnote, though. It may seem that way now to some now. So let's talk about Jim Crow, because oftentimes you guys don't really understand maybe history. So if you look up and understand your historical people, right, through our timeline, Jim Crow was not a person who oppressed Black people. He was a person who helped Black people. He assisted with harvesting slaves who were becoming free people or had the intention of becoming free people by force. He helped with the underground railroad for slaves becoming free and running away from oppression. These are things that Jim Crow did. So when we talk about Jim Crow laws, you guys really, so yeah, do your research, then come back and let's have the conversation. Simple observation wasn't really meant to be more than that. So your previous comment is the same exact rhetoric that oppressive white people and white supremacists have yielded in conversations with Black people, brown people, melanated people for ages. So whatever it was meant to be, that's the reality. So, but either way, no offense is taken because we're about facts, not the emotions. So only the pragmatics. Oh, okay, yeah. I didn't see your comment prior to. But yeah, so here's what I want you guys to take from this. We've talked about a lot of things, and the current state of Black America is one that has moved us so far from what it is that our ancestors have intended for us, as far as like the directionality as to how far we can progress. We have we have everything that we need to win, to continue to thrive as people. But like I said, the bonds of trust have been broken over the course of years, so much to the point that when we reviewed this content from Mr. He Got Game last week, one of the main points that was brought up during the conversation went to this young man who had been married 4 times, right? And I'm going to pull it up for those of you who didn't catch it or whatever. We'll skip through so you guys can see him. But we didn't look at the highlights of his story. And I think that if we are people to be very honest about the directionality of our culture, and we're honest to see where we go wrong and point out those points of where we've gone so far left or so far right, to where we're continuing to perpetuate the cycle of destruction within ourselves and our culture, we would point out the fact that the number one thing you guys want to talk about is the fact that this man has been married 4 times. He is a man who has been married 4 times, who has several children, 6 children, I think is what he said. He has several children, and his wife had no kids when they got married, but he is married to another Black woman. And this Black woman is a doctor. He is a retired serviceman. The first thing that we can say, if the first thing that comes to mind is that, oh, well, you've been married 4 times, so you can't talk about why a woman should submit to a man. What that says is that we are broken people. It says that we are broken people who really need reconstruction around our mindsets and what we decide to weigh in on, or how we decide to weigh in on the issues in the Black community. If we say that if we mention submission to Black women, it puts a disgusting or a bitter taste in the mouth of Black women, right? We have to be people that will question that point in and of itself. So let's figure out why it is that the word submission causes us as Black women to feel a certain way, right? Right? Okay. So let's talk about it. Submission and trust go hand in hand. They go hand in hand. Submission is a conduit to trust. Trust is a conduit to submission. So if we have found somewhere within ourselves that we've discovered we have no sense of purpose, no sense of drive, and things like that, right? No faith in life. What happened is we have to submit to a higher authority, our spiritual component, in order for us to have trust in a process, any type of faith or hope, trust in a process that there is some outcome that is more positive than where we are currently seated. And as a result of knowing that that is there, we're going to go ahead and we're going to submit to this higher authority so that our steps can further be ordered in a way that is conducive to positive outcomes for us. So if we look at it in a relational way, and we look at what it is that makes Black women say that, you know what, I'm not submitting to a Black man. For what? I don't need a man. Isn't that what most successful Black women say, right? It has to do with trust. So historically, what we've learned is over the last couple of decades is that Black men, excuse me, have become less reliable. So their actions have caused Black women to not trust them as much. Okay. So I feel like that young man had a lot of great information to offer. So we're going to get into this.
Real quick.
Can't see him.
No, right decisions. You see what I'm saying? That's not even submission. It's just cooperation.
Okay, I want to get to the Elliot.
Well, for me, I'm going to say I require submission.
And I totally understand what Ray's talking about, but I'm talking about from a spiritual perspective. And so for me, our house has to be ran like that. And I totally agree with Ray about a man having to have his stuff together and the idea of a woman having to have a father figure. My wife had a father figure. She was raised by her father and her mom. And I definitely reminded her of her dad. And so she came into it knowing how relationships work. And so it was no question that my wife submitted to her father. And I saw that, and that drew me to her. And so when I came, I had that same personality. So it was an easy transition. I mean, even her father, he had to tell her, "Hey, I'm letting you go, and now all commands come from your husband." And that's pretty much how it was, and it's always been. But as a man, I have to
That's
have
some
my stuff
submission
together.
money.
I
Hey,
have to. I have.
go
I
ahead.
have to have my stuff together. Like, so as a leader, I have to be able to know how to manage my home in regards to finances, how to communicate to my wife. Just because you are the leader, that doesn't mean you drag your wife. At the end of the day, I have to show my wife the love and care that a man should show from a biblical perspective. My whole life is devoted to caring for my wife, to make her life as easy as possible, to make sure in her role she can be successful. So I work long hours. I do the businesses. I'm trying to make sure that she doesn't ever have to work for anyone again. That's me. That's my role to
So right
care
now
for
she's
her, to
still working
nurture
right
her.
now currently as a doctor, right?
Yeah, she's working right now as a doctor, but in 6 years, that's over with. And she'll take those skills and then we'll migrate them into the business. But she has 6 more years before she retires, then we'll be double retired.
So
So right
Elliot, I
now,
got to ask this question. I hate to
yeah.
interrupt you, Elliot, but I
Oh, go
got to
ahead, go
get
ahead,
to
go
the
ahead.
good part. So this is your fourth marriage, and
Mhm.
you have what, 3 kids, correct?
Five.
Five
Well,
kids,
six,
five kids, six
six
kids,
including my
well,
daughter.
including
Yeah.
one. So how did you approach your wife? That's what I have to know.
So,
How did
so
I
with
mean?
me,
No, seriously,
so with
seriously.
me, with me, and no real talk. I
That's
mean,
usually
look, this is
that's
supposed to
usually
be
a
real.
red
This is supposed to
flag.
be
You
real
know what I
talk.
mean?
Yeah, this is supposed to be real talk. So when I met my wife, me and my wife was both making six figures when me and my wife met. That's number one. So she, what I'm saying, I had my own gym business, and I was in the military. So we both came with credentials professionally. Now, when we came to personally, my wife on resume and in real life is an anomaly. She's like a meteor that just come out of nowhere. She had never been married, no kids,
Okay.
and completing her doctorate. And then for me, I had children in previous marriages. What for me what helped me come to my wife was that I was at a point in my life where I was getting my life together in regards to my personal life, my spiritual life. And so I was going through therapy. I was going through that transition, and she was my friend. And then as I progressed and I was doing my thing from that side, then we naturally fell into place. But she saw out that my character, even with all of that, was stellar in regards to who I was as a man and my principles, because I was transitioning and transforming into my real manhood and not that childish stuff that I was doing back in the day. And so she met me at that right moment while I was transitioning. And besides that, I had the other resume to back it up. So for us, it was just a timing, and then we just hit it off. And so it was all good. And then after that, man, once we got married, we got engaged. We got married in less than a year.
Wow.
So we met in
I was the best
January.
man.
Yeah, and Ray was my best man, and we met in January. We were cool. We started dating like exclusively like in around June. We got proposed in September. We got married in November. I don't believe in long engagements, and this was after my commitment to Christ and all those things. So that's what sealed it. Once I committed my life to God and truly was going through that conversion, my wife was all for it. Outside of that, none of that would have worked.
Wow. Wow. Amazing story. I can tell you that. Amazing story. I can tell you that. So, what do you call a beta man?
Rich.
Who was that
Rich.
laughing?
Go ahead.
Who was
Philip.
that laughing? What's the definition of a beta man? That's what I want to know. If a woman's not with an alpha man, she's with a beta man, correct?
No, not necessarily. There's
Okay.
also a delta, and there's also a damn omega.
Break them
Omega
down
is the
to us, Ray.
last hierarchy. Period.
So break them down to us then, Ray.
Alpha, beta, delta, and omega. Omega is the last. He's the last to eat, basically. You see what I'm saying? So basically, what a lot of women don't understand when they say, "I want a guy with alpha qualities," what you really want is a beta male, because a beta male is gonna patronize you all day, tell you how beautiful you are, and give you whatever you want, and he's gonna be a happy wife, happy life type of dude. When you with an alpha, you ain't gonna get all that. It is what it is.
All right then. So that's it. I figured alpha and beta, but I'm sure didn't figure delta. So that's something new to me. I want to give a quick commercial break real quick because we do have a sponsor. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this sponsor in real quick.
Hello, this is attorney Robert James of Robert James Trial Attorneys. If you
when it comes to let's say submission, we're talking about head of household, I guess, in so many words. Am I correct?
I mean, it doesn't have to be, just generalized the head of household. I mean, it could mean different things, but I did want to touch on that a second. All that fodder and a lot of that's BS. A woman, like I said, she's going to submit to somebody she respects, but ultimately someone she wants. I equate it. It's almost like the sexual harassment thing. If Eldris Alba comes and puts her hand on a woman's shoulder in the workplace, oh, that's just Idris Alba. But if Gary Coleman did it, then she going to human resources. It could have been the same perception or whatever, just a different package. If a woman, you could have all the credentials and all the resumes in the world, but at the end of the day, if a woman rocks with you and she's gonna, delve into you, she's gonna submit. If she doesn't, I don't care what your resume says. She's still going to challenge you. She's going to challenge that. She's going to try that, especially if she's a go-getter.
Okay,
she's just naturally going to challenge you.
Believe it or not, I have a woman who believes in submission.
I'm shocked at that, but go ahead.
I have a woman that believes in submission, so I'm going to get her on the telephone real quick, okay?
Okay.
Hopefully she answers. She should be paying attention.
Hello.
What's going on, Nia?
Hey, Reggie. How are you?
Good. Welcome to the show, and thank you for allowing me to call you to be on the show.
Of course.
So the word submission doesn't put a bad taste in your mouth. Am I correct?
That is correct.
So explain why.
Well, because I think that the word submission has a negative connotation in today's society. But as a person that has grown, healed, been through some things, and actually sat down to take the time to learn what submission is and have been with men that are great leaders, to me, I think submission speaks to how men and women operate in relationships. A man is supposed to nurture and love his wife, and in turn, she is able to curate a home and a space for him, and that is what submission is like the yin and yang of a relationship, right? So you nurture me, you love me, you care for me, and in turn, I curate this home for you. I provide a safe space for you. You're able to be vulnerable with me. It's not about a master versus slave type deal, which I think a lot of people look at it as today.
I agree completely. And just an example, you said provide a safe environment or a pleasant environment. Just give me 1 or 2 examples. What you mean by that?
So like, I think it varies. It varies by the people that are involved in the household, right? Like what is comfortable for one man is not the same for or another man, but it's a grooming process, right? So like, let me back up a little bit. First off,
Okay.
I think I've heard some of the fellas say that a man has to know how to lead, and that is correct, because submission is brought out of women by men. It's not something that every man is deserving of. But I think we also need to point out that submission isn't for every woman either.
Oh.
You have to look at the people that are involved. Is the person that you're courting or trying to be with the type that's going to submit to you? Are you a
Mm.
good leader? And I think that a lot of times men and women don't acknowledge where they are with it. Like there are a lot of men out there that will say women should submit and have no idea how to lead. You don't make good decisions. You're not financially sound. You're
Yep.
dumb. I mean, there's no way that a man of that caliber is going to get a woman worth her salt to submit to him. It's just not going to happen.
So what's the financial plateau for submission? I need to know if I got my bucks lined up enough.
It shouldn't be a financial nothing.
So it's
It shouldn't be.
so that's the thing.
It shouldn't be, but it is.
Okay, it is.
No,
It is,
I disagree.
absolutely.
Okay,
Because
hold
if you're
on.
a greeter, let me
Hold
tell
on,
you
hold on,
something.
hold
If
on.
you're a
We don't
greeter
know.
at a Walmart, ain't a woman out there going to submit to you. I don't care how nice and
I did.
loving
Well, look,
Yeah.
well,
I mean, you're right,
Pedro,
though. I mean, you're right.
Pedro,
Listen,
You're right.
Pedro,
Hold on,
Pedro
let her
woman,
talk.
Pedro
Let her
work at
talk.
Walmart, and
yes,
Pedro
it,
woman
it
submit to him,
absolutely should be.
so it doesn't matter.
No.
Okay,
That's because
I want
Pedro's woman is a
hey,
lead. Man,
Elliot,
stop with that BS.
Philip. Let's hear a response. Go ahead.
It absolutely matters. Here's why. For me personally, my house is a well-oiled, finely tuned machine. My finances are in order. Emotionally, I'm in order. So you have to come to the table with something that's going to make me want to leave my peace in order to invite you into my life. I'm not signing up for struggle.
Okay,
You
so
don't have to be the richest man.
yes.
You don't have to be the wealthiest man. You don't have to be the best looking man out the bunch, but you have to have it together.
So
Fred,
again, how much money you talking about?
I just
Ching
Fred.
ching. I need to
there's
know. That's them dollars.
there's not I don't think that there is a dollar amount, right? Because
Okay.
you can have a man that makes six figures that's living check to check.
You're right.
That
Yeah,
can
but-
make things happen,
Right.
right?
I,
You're right.
I
You
think
can
that
also
the
have a
point that we
man-
were getting at is that everybody is not going to be in the same socioeconomic background. Some
Thank you.
people are going to be making $35,000, $45,000 a year within their households. And that's where they want to be. That's where they're comfortable at. You see what I'm saying? So that doesn't mean that that man that's making $45,000 a year does not deserve submission within his house. We're talking, you see, what we're doing is we're equating this to our lives. Of course, for our lives,
Right.
you know, most of us are six-figure earners, okay? Totally
Right,
different
right.
ball game, but we can't knock the little guy either.
And that's my
And-
point.
and
Like you go to other
it's really-
cultures, they
I'm sorry, go
don't.
ahead.
That's not even a thing.
So
Well,
this
my
whole
father's
this whole
Syrian,
this whole
and
six
I'm gonna
figure
tell you,
thing. I wanted to address that really quick. It's not about, and I hear the term thrown around, and I know just the guys on the panel, everyone's doing really, really well financially, but it's not about a certain financial point. Okay, I make this. It's your debt to income ratio.
Yep.
Because you could be making $100,000 a year, but you can be in debt 120 grand a year and be in the range. You can be making $60,000 a year and be putting 30,000 away or towards investment. So I think that speaks to what you were saying, Ray, about, it's not necessarily a financial, regardless of your
Exactly.
financial situation, your home,
Exactly.
the guy should be submitting. You're right. I mean, the girl should be
Right.
submitting. That's absolutely correct.
Yeah, I agree.
Neil, you got anything else you want to recap on before we discontinue the call? Because your status quo is about to go up.
you you're so silly. No, I mean, I just think it's important. I think a lot of people leave out who they're dealing with and really taking a look at themselves, right? It's really important to know if you're dealing with a woman that will submit, because sometimes we choose men based on our trauma levels. But I also think it's important as women to know really, or recognize really early if that man is able to submit. And then we have to look at ourselves and say, do we want to submit? Is that the type of lifestyle we want? And as men, y'all have to say, am I able to lead? And be really honest about if you're able to lead a household. And it's okay if you can't. My parents, I grew up with, two parents in the household. My father and mother were best friends, but he did not run the household.
Okay.
My mother, hands down, ran the household. They were best friends. It's what worked for them. So I don't think that it's, one size fits all. But definitely, men, it's up to you as to whether or not we're going to submit.
Yeah, that was the Nia I know back in 2004.
Well,
Now
can I add this since they're off the
Man.
Can I add this?
Before wasn't having it.
With there
Thanks a lot,
being
Neil,
a
okay?
large population
All right,
of
thanks.
single mothers in our communities, 9 times out of 10, when a single guy is going to meet a woman, he's going to meet a woman with kids. It just is what it is, right? And most women are not going to put their husband, their new husband, before that kid. It just is what it is.
What do you say about that, Elliot? Go ahead. Now, Elliot has his own podcast as well. Go ahead and give a little shout out real quick to your podcast.
Yeah, it's the Own the Jubilee podcast. Man, I got a couple things, Reg. If you can let me speak on this a little bit.
Go ahead.
First, for one of the ladies, I just want to answer her question because she had a question directly for me. She said, "How can a man that's been married 4 times talk about submission?" I get that a lot, and that's a fair question. One, I guess I will always push back because half the time the people answer that question, they probably never been married themselves. That's number one. And just because you fail in something at one time doesn't mean that you don't grow and evolve. So this idea of like you failed and all of a sudden that you can't get right, that's ridiculous and preposterous. Anybody can be redeemed and be reformed. So my 3 marriages prior to this one, at least I made the commitment to get married, and I didn't go about it the wrong way. So for all of them that want to cap and be like, oh well, you've been married 4 times, half of them never been married themselves, and that don't have the courage to get married. That's number one. So be careful when you say those type of things. That's number one. And but number two, going back to what you was asking about, Ray, about the kids thing, that's a valid point. My wife, like I said, she didn't have kids, and in a previous marriage, I was a stepfather. That's a thankless job, bro. Like men are not signing up to be stepfathers, bro. I'm just being honest.
That's a hard task.
That's a hard task. So asking a woman because when you asking a woman to submit in that context, man, she has the kid's father and she has you. Who is she supposed to listen to, right? And so that dynamic can be catastrophic. And so a lot of men stay, leery of that because it can be convoluted. So, and that's something to be careful on. And then quickly to add to what my man was saying about, about submission in regards to it's the type of man or she will choose what man she will submit to. The reason why I push back on that a little bit is because I believe women are raised to be submissive, that you can't turn submission or femininity on and off, just like you can't turn masculinity on and off. You can't one day say I'm a leader and the next day say I'm not. So either you're groomed and you've been trained to do this or you haven't.
Groomed by whom? Groomed by whom? Groomed by whom?
Your parents. So when I met my wife, she was already submitting to her father. She knew her father was giving her the game. Her father was grooming her. So when I came along, it was a transition. So if men aren't raised to be leaders, then now you have to go learn as an adult to be a leader. But if you were raised by your parents, like your father and your mother, which a lot of us weren't, then you're trained to be that way. So women, it's no such thing as like, I can turn submission on for the man and turn it off for the wrong man. Either you have a submissive feminine spirit or you don't. Like if you can get with an alpha man and still be combative and lose that man.
So before we let the rest of it play, because I'm definitely going to let the rest of it play this evening. So before we get there, though, I want to have this talk right here. So do you feel like it's a natural thing? And I'm sorry, you guys, for the glare. I need these blue lights. Okay, to protect these eyes. So do you feel like women should be submitting to everybody? And also, I want to go to this question that the Owl Show left around submission being a religious construct. I think that the official urban therapist, we had a little bit of conversational exchange in the chat as well around submission in women. So here's the thing. Spirituality trumps religion every time. Every time. So spirituality is something that has been around since people have been around. Human beings have been around. Some people equate that to the religious constructs of Christianity. On other people to Allah. Other people, who have, the Buddhist baby Buddha, Mahatma Gandhi concepts, consider the spiritual element and not only the elementals, the earth, sun, fire, galaxy, wind, and water, all of these different elements being a part of it. Okay, now what I will say is this: submission is a mindset. Okay, it means that we feel so greatly that we can put our trust in a concept or a construct in life, that we're going to give it all to that thing. Okay, that's what it means essentially. If we were to break it down in its basic elementary phase so that we can all have a very clear understanding of it, we submit to a lot of things every day. Every day we do. We submit to the authorities of the law when we allow the legal process to play itself out. That's one of those things that, Black people struggle with, that we don't like to talk about. That's the elephant in the room when we talk about our Black young men and women dying at the hands of police officers. When it's time to be arrested, when it's time to receive a citation, when it's time to listen to and comply with the police officers, we struggle with that. That's a reality, because we don't like to submit. And over the course of our last couple of decades of Black people, Black and brown people, we've looked at the negative interactions with police officers and us. And I tell you, it goes back to trust every time. And that's the thing that plays to the mindset of, I cannot trust them with my safety, so I'm not going to submit to their authority. I'm going to try to have court in these streets. And guess what? It's going to end up unfavorable for you every single time. It just is. Okay? When you are suspected of breaking the law, you have to let the process do what it's going to do. Go to jail, go to court, fight it out in court. That's where your fight's supposed to take place. It all starts up here, our perceptions. So if we feel like we cannot submit to people because people have taught us historically with their actions as a generalized component. Now we're not talking about the individuals that we're specifically talking about submission to, right? We're just talking about the generalization of men. If we talk about men have taught us that they cannot be trusted because they are whole hoes. They out here for everybody. You for the streets, right? Then women are not going to want to submit, because they're going to say, I can't give everything to this man. I can't give everything to this man and really expect him to provide for me in a way that's conducive to me gaining ground in life and not leaving me out to dry. I can't do that, because historically, the actions of men have told me that I cannot trust him. He's going to go out here. He's going to make babies in these streets. I'm going to be a stepmama to the girl next door, her kids, because they're going to be the kids that my husband has had out of wedlock. And we're married still. This is a poor investment. All right? That's exactly what a woman is going to feel, what she's going to think, because she's going to be thinking based off of her traumas. And I like the fact that the girl, Nia, if I'm not misquoting her name, I like the fact that she mentioned that her old self, her 2004 self, was not going to be having it. She wasn't going to be submitting, because her mindset, based on her current level of exposure at that point in her life, had not yielded the fact that she could trust in, therefore submit to any man. And I like the fact that she realized that women are not supposed to be submitting to everybody. So men like women who are submissive, and that's the term that they use. And I like to point them towards the fact that women are not naturally supposed to submit to you, sir. Women are supposed to be cooperative, as Kevin Samuels would say. I do agree with that, because if they're in the dating pool, that means they should be well enough emotionally. They should be congruent enough emotionally to realize nobody wants a broken thing. What do kids do with broken toys? They toss them in the trash. or they discard them with the toys that they don't play with. So those toys don't get selected. They don't get picked. And I think that that's what Kevin Samuels is trying to teach to these young Black women nowadays. And I think that he's totally wrong when he say that women don't hold women accountable. I do it every day. Okay. But I'm just going to hold men accountable in the same way. So if you're disrespectful in conveying that message to a woman, how do you expect for her to receive it and take action upon that thing? She's just not going to do it. She's just, especially if you're talking about the same women that you're having the conversation about, right? So if you've called me out and you told me you got a problem, modern day women got a problem with submitting. Modern day women got a problem with being overly masculine, over opinionated, whatever it is you want to say about modern day women. If you call said woman up to a conversation, she's still going to be that same woman that you just said she was. She's going to present with that same energy of defensive and hostility. Why? Because she's already expecting that she cannot trust you because you have a long history of being disrespectful towards Black women. You have a long history of silencing the thoughts and reflections of Black women, though you invite them on your show to share those same said perspectives. You have a history of showing that when women don't agree with what your assessments of their lives yield, right? You're disrespectful. You silence them, you mute them, you call them names like a whole child. So they have every right to be defensive. You can let a person know that, well, you know what, we don't share the same sentiments, because guess what? I may not agree with a lot of you guys' sentiments, because many of you people, even though you follow my channel, even though you follow my content, because we are human beings and we go through different struggles in life, you might have different perspectives than mine. Your negative experiences may have impacted you more so than my negative experience, and therefore shaped your views and your expectations of what the Black community has as viable resources very much differently than what I see when I look at what the Black community has a propensity to do. You understand what I'm saying? So in these conversations, it doesn't mean that I'm just going to divest and tell you that you're wrong, right? It means that I'm going to invite your perspective. I'm still going to post it and we're going to talk about it. If I disagree with it, I'm going to let you know that I disagree with it. That doesn't tell you that you need to be agreeing with me next time. It tells you that I just don't agree based on my experience, my research, my tenure. You understand what I'm saying? This is just something that I don't agree with. And that's all right. So you have to learn how to be respectful and accept the fact that some people, even if you have spot on research, Kevin Samuels, they're still going to disagree with you. Because for every single statistic that you present to us as the Black community or any other community of people, we know that the exceptions exist. That's why therapy works. As therapists, we look for the exception. The exception is where you find healing, because the exception is where your trauma does not exist anymore. It's where your trauma does not win anymore. It's where your trauma is laid down, it's buried, and only revisited when you need to do in remembrance of it. That's it. That's it. So essentially, I need you guys to understand, like, we've got to become people who evolve into states of understanding that the reason we find ourselves perpetuating the cycles of uselessness in our relationships is because we're not doing so intentionally. We're not dating intentionally. Our intentions say that we are trying to get married, right? But what is marriage to us, right? What is marriage? If we're people who are completely divested from religion, completely divested from spiritual constructs, completely divested from anything, right? What the hell is marriage? Marriage is nothing, because marriage is a component of those elements. It is. So if we make a commitment, those commitments are made before God and man. So if you have no spiritual component at all, who the hell is God? All that exists for you is man. So there is no accountability when you do screw up. You can't make this stuff up. So the mindsets of Black American young people in this generation only operates off of the construct in which their belief systems currently are seated. And so if we are to say, okay, we need to reconstruct respectability politics in Black culture, we first have to get down and dirty and recognize that our culture is very complex. It includes all of those negative things that you've been conditioned to walk around and tote around as vicarious trauma. But it also includes all of those great attributes of our ancestors, those people who have contributed to our current state of being, those people who lost their lives in the interest of our freedom, those people who lost their lives in the interest of our elevation, education, insight, growth, maturation through this whole journey of experiences. Okay. We have to be people who own that. And we have to be people that understand that we have to submit to something if we are going to elevate anywhere in life. You do. Look at business partnerships. Okay. You cannot build a business partnership without submitting to whatever agreement principles you and that partner have decided to lean into. That contract, if you will. Put your trust in that contract. Put your trust in that person. And in your absence, submit to the authority of that person. Expect them to run the business as you guys have agreed to, as it relates to the contract. Do you see what I'm saying? So marital contracts are built off of the construct of God, religion, spirituality, regardless of whichever marriage you're in. If it's a God-based relationship or a spiritual-based relationship, it still requires that the man who is supposed to be the figurative head, or the female who is the identified figurative head of the system, if we're talking about a homosexual marriage between women, it's still requiring whoever that person is considered to be the leader submits to a higher authority, so that the submission acquired by their person who is in a relationship with them, their partner, has something sound and solid to lean on as it relates to accountability principles in that relationship. That's just what it is. So let me look at some of your comments before we jump back into the video. Says the guy who had 4 marriages wants to spin his past. Understandable, but people who are not married and aren't in failed relationships don't. What? Retype or finish what you were saying. Maybe you did. Oh, goodness. So which one did you think was really cute? Did you think that the one who's married to the doctor? Now, all of these men on the panel are married. I'm going to say that. So in that same concept of thinking, men can be raised to be leaders, but cannot learn. You either are or you are not. So there are some, and that's why I talked about the forced concept of submission being a point of contention that makes it very difficult for some men who are ultimately just seeking submission, and that's it. And I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to expand upon that, because here's the thing. In relationships, I think it was the Official Urban Therapist and the Al Show, they were talking about it. Or maybe it was in Twine. So in a relationship, so women are not supposed to, I talked about the cooperative component, right? So if women are in the dating pool, if they're ready to be vetted by a man for the purposes of dating and with the intention of getting married, right? They need to be emotionally, mentally, physically sound, right? And secure. And what that looks like is you have a secure sense of self. So that means that if you are a woman who is in whatever weight index you're in, okay, because the one thing that I strongly disagree with Kevin Samuels on is the fact that all men have a desire when they are in a certain financial bracket or whatever for a certain type of woman to look a certain type of way. That's just not, it's just not fact, because men are men and their money, their financial status doesn't determine their personality characteristics or their personal preference in the women that they choose in their life physically, because lots of men have different women that they're into. Some men like skinny women, some men like slim, thick women, some men like thick women that is considered to be obese, but not chronically or morbidly obese. And some men like women who are what medicine would consider to be morbidly obese. Now, what matters, I think, the most is not the weight of a person, but the health of a person. I know lots of people who are very thin and who are very unhealthy, very unhealthy, very unhealthy. And I know lots of people who are overweight and they're very unhealthy. Weight in and of itself does not indicate poor health. Okay, I'm going to say that because I think it needs to be said. I think enough doctors have been saying it for a long time, but y'all don't listen to us. You listen to each other in society. We're just going to be honest about that. Okay. However, for some people, the higher your weight climbs, the higher your other health risk factors climb, because you can't be overweight and immobile. Okay. And I always say, get to moving and do something, keep yourself active. I always say that even if you're a skinny person, because activity is what boosts, maintains health and vitality in life. Okay. So your activity level has to be high. Some people have various hormonal, conditions that contribute to their health, but their overall health is pretty good, pretty stable, right? Their hormones are just in balance. That's it. Those people may be overweight, but they're otherwise extremely healthy, right? Which is why you see so many people who are overweight living well into their 80s, 90s sometimes, and they're still very big. But their heart health is still intact. Pulmonary system is still intact. Hemocratic system is still intact, right? So all of the functional systems are still, all of your visceral systems are still intact. Everything is good. Liver and kidney functioning is still great. Whatever the situation is, those people, even though they are, according to the height weight index, overweight, they're still physically congruent, which is how I talk to people about their triglyceride levels and their cholesterol in general, and understanding that. So proportion, right? You can be overweight, but you want to make sure that your top center of your body, we talk about the cervix being the centralized focal point. So anything above the waist, the cervix is, you have two cervix, okay? One at the neck region here and one at the neck region at your bottom. So at the pelvis, right? So if your bottom area, bottom cervix area is larger than the top portion, you should be overall in pretty good health cholesterol wise. And so that's why we tape people, okay, in the military when we're talking about weight, because as long as you meet tape requirements, even if you're overweight according to BMI, if you tape, you're fine and you pass. You don't get flagged. So that's a whole nother conversation. But so what I need you guys to understand is that all men don't have the same preference in women, because if that were the case, there would be a shitload of women who were not married, period, across the board. What we see is even now, lots of heavyset women are getting married. Lots of skinny women are getting married. Lots of in-betweens are getting married. Okay. We see several marital situations taking place across the board. So whatever those men's preferences are those men's preferences, and they're entitled to them. And I think that we got to stop trying to put men and women in boxes in that way. Okay. The character, the content of a person's character is what leads to marital proposals. That's what leads to longevity in marriages. And so that's the reality. Like, I have never, with well over 200,000 couples seen in therapy, okay, I've never seen a married couple that came to me and said, I'm getting a divorce because my wife gained weight. Not even the surface shit. Like, so I think that we've got to start being honest and stop trying to be jerks about the matter, okay? So insults don't add to injury for some people, because some people are very congruent in their sense of self. They're very comfortable in their skin. So women and men alike, you need to be comfortable in your skin. And if you're not comfortable in your skin, you need to be comfortable in your plan. So that means your plan of action to reshape the skin that you're in. Okay. Whatever that entails, that's your business. Okay. I don't believe in surgery. That's just my personal preference. All right. I believe that if you want something to happen, you should make it happen naturally. You know, I've taken pills to gain weight before. If that's what you need to do it. I wouldn't have done it if I could have gained weight naturally. You know what I mean? So the same thing goes for people who struggle with losing weight. If you can't lose it naturally, you know, if you can find you a natural pill to help you lose weight, do that. So I think that you should do what works for you, so you can be the version of yourself that you would love to be. Okay, that's my point. So your internal compass of self has a lot to do with who you are. And if you're not where you want to be, you do have to work towards getting there. So that leads me back to this component of Jessica's her comment. So some men are natural leaders, right? And some men are cultivated to be great leaders, naturally great leaders, and some are cultivated to be great leaders. That's what I mean. And that's why you have leadership academies, officers candidacy school, officers basic course in the military, because these are important parts of the puzzle for us. We know that some people have a natural ability or natural knack to lead, but they still need to be molded, shaped, cultivated, tweaked just a bit to understand not only the population of people that they're going to provide leadership for, but also understand what has been working, what has been proven to be effective in leading other people. And understanding how to hone in on their leadership styles and how to convey messages to the people that are following them. So these are things that are very important. And I think that we have to be folks who understand the importance thereof. Okay. When you force a situation, when you force submission, people feel like they're being made to do something. Okay. Nobody likes to be made to do anything. Okay. Our default as human beings is not to do anything that a person tells us to do. That's our default, to be resistant. That's just who we are. We have to fight that and submit to the idea, the construct, right? That there is benefit in us complying, benefit in us cooperating with the processes that are in front of us. That's why I say women have to learn how to be cooperative more so than submissive to every man that they meet, because submission will come naturally. If that man is for you, I know like religious folks always go to what God has for me, it is for me. Literally. If it is meant for you, if that man, that woman, that entity is meant for you, that experience is meant for you, it's going to be yours regardless of how you try to run from it, reposition yourself, push yourself here, put yourself there. You're going to land back in the same space with the same folks every single time. And you're going to be asking yourself, damn, like, how did I land back here? It's because it was meant for you. Some things in this life are meant for us, and our spirit will do everything that it needs to get us back on course. Why do you think some people who go through the process of substance use and abuse all of a sudden wake up one day and they're sick? That's because your body is rejecting what you're doing, because you have a greater purpose that you're meant to be walking in, and it couldn't get you to walk in it any other way. Everything in life happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. Nothing is not for nothing, okay? So, let's see. You can replace religion with the vague concept of spirituality. Either way, submission is tied to that. It's not a thing outside of that. That's why with the guy with 4 marriages touted it, his spirituality. Well, I don't know. I guess believe what it is that you want to believe, whatever works for you. But religion isn't a part of everything that people do in the everyday sector of life when it comes to mapping out relationships, both professionally and personally. However, you still find yourself submitting to that higher authority. Religion isn't a part of you getting a citation, right, and getting pulled over. But I'm sure you still submit to the authority of the courts because you're an American citizen. So, yeah. That part. Right, Jessica. People who aren't married and not in failed relationships can and do not think much of a guy like the one on in the video. He's a guy who is thin-skinned about the being a failure in his past. You think he's thin-skinned? That's interesting. Thank you, Jessica. Marriage is a cultural phenomenon and a financial and economic one. People can be married civilly, after all. Now you can enter into a self-entered contract of marriage, well, not marriage. You could do a domestic partnership, and it's the equivalent of marriage now, because the American culture is more inviting or more accepting of people who are not religious and refuse to get married because marriage is a religious component. It says no one's nature is to be submissive. It's a tactic taught by a narcissist to keep you as supply. You have a brain to think for yourself. You don't give someone power over that. That's interesting. That's it. So do you think that submission means to vacate your own personal ideals around life? Do you think that means being subservient? Jessica, actually a definition of submit to give up to relent. Like a submissive hold is interesting. So women probably don't want to submit logically because they don't want to give up anything. Well, everything in life, but that's what we mean though. Everything in life requires you to give in order for you to gain. Literally, everything is about give and take. Everything in this life is about that. So how can you become financially wealthy, stable, or wealthy in other ways? If you think about a bank account, you have to invest. You got to put something in it in order for that thing to grow and manifest something greater to yield a return to you. So I don't understand that mindset. Means a seat in control over someone else. You guys have some interesting insights. Says, I feel like leaders are born, not made. I don't know. Some people just can't fit them shoes no matter how hard they find. Now, some people cannot lead because they don't have the capacity within them just yet. And it's not something that they're designed or meant to do. I talk about that when I talk about walking in your purpose. Not everybody is born to lead. Not everybody is meant to lead. Even those who are born to lead sometimes have to be taught to lead properly. Does that make sense? So people who are supposed to lead find themselves walking in a path where their purpose is leadership. We have to be cultivated into, molded into, matured into proper leadership. Right? So we can learn how to put the greater good above our own personal interest so that our objectives can be acquired to by those people who are following us. And that's a really important thing. I think that the selfless component and the selfish components of leadership have to sometimes be molded and cultivated in people in order for them to be the best leaders possible. Says, also from my perspective as a longtime bachelor, this wouldn't work for me. I don't like dependent people. I need someone who can make their own decisions and do their own thing. So who says that submission means that you don't have your own perspective or you don't do your own thing? So this man that's speaking that you're talking about, who has been married for 4 times, his wife is a doctor, business owner. And her submission doesn't mean that she vacates her position and she doesn't have her own mind and isn't very much independent, therefore interdependent on their relationship. Means that, you know, as it relates to their relationship dynamics and the constructs and confines of healthy relating, she submits to him to build more wealth, to generate more wealth. And yeah, marriage is definitely a way to build and expand income, which he talks about that too.
So it doesn't,
how do you change that though? Let me ask you this. And like I mentioned before, unfortunately, you know, a lot of women didn't have a father figure in their life to, you know, to be there to teach them how to interact with men and how to talk to men. So if you're raised by a single mother, majority of the time, unfortunately, women say you don't need a man, which is hypothetically not true. Am I correct?
But you're right, and half of them are in the church, right? So why aren't they have elders, they have pastors that can take that role of submission. Half of them are in the church, so they can take that role as well. They got brothers, they got uncles, they have men in their lives that they can practice submission.
All right then, let's go. So,
Elliot, I'm sorry, Reg, I want to address something Elliot said real quick.
Go ahead,
I agree with the majority of what he said. 2 points, though. You said that women are raised to be submissive.
okay.
I think in this day and age, I unequivocally disagree with that, because just for the fact of what we've been discussing, a lot of women are coming up just like a lot of men are coming up in single parent households. And because you're coming up in that single parent household, a lot of times, because they're not dependent on anyone to make anything happen, they're going out, and single mothers, single fathers are doing what they have to do to get it done. They instill that matriculates down to their children. Hey, don't depend on anyone. You go get it. It's all about you. You go to school, you get your education, you get your career. After all that's done, everything's left over. Then see about dating or whatever. That's point one. I disagreed on that. Point number 2, when you said you can't be a leader one day and a follower the next day, or vice versa. I agree with that as well, because you can go into a situation where you're a leader on one level, and then when you move up, you have to follow. Let's take, you guys are both military men. As a E3, you may lead all E3s, time and grade or whatever, but then once you become a E4, staff sergeant, whatever, then you might be you may be learning from good leaders. So you can wear dual hats. And like they say, it's good to be a leader and know how to follow good leaders. And I just want to touch on those.
I think that's a little I guess that's a little misconstrued. What I'm saying is you have to have, like, even when I was an E3, I was still, like you said, I was still a leader. So as a husband, my number one priority is to submit to God, right? So I follow all commands from the Lord, period. So yes, my role as a husband is to lead my family, but I also submit to God. But my point is, you can't proclaim yourself to be a leader and then you just kind of wish-washy. Like 1 minute you, like, just say for example, you're in a family. 1 minute you decisive, and the next minute you like, oh, I'm be indecisive.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Indecisive. Correct.
It doesn't work like that. Like, either you are a decisive man by character, or you're not.
You gotta do what you say. You know what I mean, that you're going to do. If you say you're going to do something, you got to do it, point blank.
Right. So you can't be kind and nice to one minute to a man and then be rude and obnoxious and be like, oh, but I can be submissive to the right one, but I have a lot of attitude with this one.
Or
That
Reggie,
is a
or
good
in other
question. What's the
words,
right one?
I want to, or in other words, I want to be traditional when it benefits me, but independent also when it benefits me. You can't have it both ways. You see what I'm saying? And I think that's what he's kind of touching on without putting it the way I just now put it.
Well, the way you put it is,
Right, I agree.
the way you
Basically,
put it
you're
last time.
traditional whenever it gives you tangible assets within a relationship. You see what I'm saying? But you want to be independent. You know what I'm saying? Give you a prime example. Like, I know some guys that work a 9 to 5 and their wife works a 9 to 5, making damn good money the whole 9 yards. The husband pays all the bills. Okay? And let his wife run crazy and do whatever they want to do with their money, right? Okay. There's no way you're gonna leave my house for 10 hours and go to work for Mr. Charlie, okay, and then come back home tired, okay, and you don't contribute to the house. It just don't work that way. So basically what I'm trying to say is that you want it both ways and you can't have it both ways.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because Elliot, you mentioned there's no separation with finances when it comes to your household. Am I correct?
Absolutely not.
And I haven't done that yet. So could you, what about you, Ray? Is there separation or is it one pot?
Yeah.
What? Which one?
Yeah. One pot.
Okay. Could one of you two?
Everything's transparent.
Could one of you two explain how that one pot thing works?
Well, no, it's not necessarily one pot. All accounts go into one credit union basically, and there's several accounts within that box, right? Couple of checking accounts, some savings accounts, some money markets. Checks come in, goes out to different verities or whatever not, and that's pretty much how it is. So we can see, you should be able to see what everybody's doing with the church's money basically, and it's to hold you accountable. Basically, is what it is.
But is there an agreement on who spends what and how much you got? How much you're allotted to spend? That's the question.
Definitely.
That's the question. In other words, if I'm sharing accounts with my wife, which I haven't done so yet, if I'm sharing accounts with my wife, there has to be some type of accountability, and this is part of the submission.
What I'm trying to say is this right here: you each are going to get a certain amount of money that you want to spend personally every month or every 2 weeks. You do whatever you want to do with your money. You know what I'm saying? But as far as the savings for the house and the house money, all that stuff it has to be dressed, man.
Yeah. So for me, Reg, I would say we have one. So I believe personally that the husband is responsible for creating for the vision for the family to include the finances. Okay. And that's my belief, that the husband dictates the vision and the woman helps him go towards that vision and execute. And so for me, I manage all the money in our home. For the first year, my wife was more talented in that area, and then I got on the grind and started learning more about money, more about business, real estate, the whole bit. And then I took it over because I believe that's my responsibility. And so from that point forward, everything comes into one pot. I design the budget and I go over with my wife every month about this is what we're doing, this is where the money is going. And we have that conversation. My wife brings enormous value to those conversations because she's bringing insight and wisdom to where now I can make even better decisions. And so, that's the way we roll. We're joint on everything. There's no separation.
Every house and everything, credit cards and everything.
Credit card, everything. Every credit card, every house, every car, all of our accounts, all of our investments, everything is joint. All of it. We have a living trust.
What point somebody wants to go on a shopping spree? I mean, and then it happens because we all want to spoil ourselves at one point or another. So when do you say, or when do you say, hey, I want to go shopping. I want to go spend $500 on some clothes. I want to spend $300 on this. I want to go out and have some drinks with the fellas. How does that come into play?
I budget. So, I'm a planner. So if I know, like if I want to go to Atlanta and go kick it with Ray, then I'm already going to budget that for that month. So I don't really do that type of stuff, or just that surprise type stuff anymore. And my wife doesn't either. Like if she want to go, every year she has like a little annual thing, and I make sure that's with her girls. I just make sure that's in the budget. But if she come up and talk about she wants to spend my wife won't do that. She won't say she wants to spend $500 on
So I like the fact that he mentioned that, and then I like the fact that you brought that up as well, Danielle, because that's the first thing that clicked for you, especially considering Ray. Okay, I'm just gonna I'm Ray. I don't know you personally, sir, but you know your masculinity is a bit toxic. No, seriously. You know, I always say whatever works for the couple, whatever works for your system, then if it ain't broke, don't fix it, okay? But so here's the thing. If you get married, right? Because I love it when people bring that up, because I think that if we are getting married with divorce on the table, we're not marrying for longevity. And that's fine, because some people are like, you know, marriage is a business in so many different ways, okay? And so the business of marriage could be, okay, we're going to be married for 15 years. We're not going to have any kids. We're going to be married for 20 years, and we're going to have a couple of children. And once they get older, we're going to go out and live our separate lives. As a result, we're going to build this together. And this is what we're going to take away from the marriage when we leave separately. This is the percentage that you're going to get. This is the percentage I'm going to get. And hopefully we have these children, and this is the percentage they're going to get, right? Whatever works for you. Whatever works for you, okay? But I'm going to say this. I'm a woman who believes in allowing a man to have his separate finances with the overarching expectation that you need to manage your money and you need to take care of all of the bills of the house. All significant bills of the house need to be that the man does. That I'm a traditionalist in that way. I just am. Now, does that mean I don't believe that the woman's finances contributes to the household? Of course I do. I feel like the woman's finances, for the bulk of it, if she's a working woman, should definitely go towards the couple's financial congruence and growth. So that means their investments. Those decisions are still made by the couple together. Those finances are still the couple's together. Just like those finances that are coming from the male's pocket are still the couple's together. So either way, whether you're putting the money in one said pot altogether or you're separating the vision of the money, I don't know what it is you guys are doing. I think everybody should still have access to the account information. Whether it's the primary account of the other person or not, you still should have access, because what happens when you die? When I'm marrying for a lifetime and not for a limited time. So my investments are longitudinal. When you marry, you should be emotionally mature enough to get married. So you should know better than to mess up somebody's finances. And you should know how to properly problem solve, right? So you shouldn't be doing those things that cause these types of mindsets to present in the first place. And I think that healthy married couples go through premarital counseling, and they understand the financial risks of what their marriage is specifically entail, and they work those kinks out prior to making the commitment to marriage. Before getting married to one another, they should have worked all of that stuff out, because that's a part of the process for you. So I think that your mindsets need to be mature enough before you even enter into that situation. And if you're marrying someone and you feel like that person is financially irresponsible, then you probably don't need to be marrying that someone. If you're a man and you're getting married and you don't expect to have the, overarching responsibility of paying the most important bills of the household, right? So like your mortgage, your rent, those car payments or whatever it is that you guys got going on, then, I don't know, don't know what to say. Figure it out. Get a woman that believes in the same thing you do, but there is no woman that's going to align herself. If she has the expectations that I have, she's not going to align herself with a man that doesn't believe that it's his responsibility to provide for the livelihood of the family system. And so what that looks like is There is financial transparency. There are no secrets. There is a vision that's already been presented, very similar to what Elliot's talking about in this video. You've presented what your expectations are financially, what your goals are financially with your partner. You guys have talked about where you want to be in 5 years. You've talked about where you want to be in 10 years. You've talked about where you want to be in 15. You've talked about where you want your finances to be, where you want your personal congruence and growth to be, because you guys have to remain separate entities. Sometimes people like to have their separate accounts, or whatever, and they're entitled to their privacy. But it doesn't mean there's not transparency, so you don't have access, right? So I think that that's an important thing there. I think that we need to understand that those are very important components to having a healthy relationship. Trust leads to submission. Women are not going to submit if they don't trust you. They're just not going to do that. So, Al, I respectfully disagree. I think that because you're single and you've been a long-term bachelor, as you put it, your mindset is not that of a person who is going to be tethered to any other person. Your mindset is that of a person who's probably going to be single forever, and you're going to probably die alone, and you need to go buy a cat or a dog, as Kevin Samuels will say. But no, I'm just kidding. But the reality around that is, he says that for a reason, okay? He says that for a reason, because the realities are, if your mindset is not ready for marriage to receive a real woman, you're never going to get a real woman, okay? If your mindset is not one to take care of that woman who's looking for submission to be a component that she steps into with a man, if your mindset is not ready to lead that woman appropriately and provide and protect and be that component that she gives her stability, you're not going to get that. You're not get it. You're going to find yourself in a cycle of forced competitive rounds with a woman, and you're trying to force submission. She's trying to compete with you, and as a result, you guys end up in the same cycle with somebody else. That's just what it is, Oh, well, one of them has been married for 20 some odd years, and the other one has been married for about probably a little bit longer, Philip. So I don't know. I don't know about that. Submission is okay if you know who and what you are submitting to. It can open the door to a better understanding of your true purpose. Agreed. Marriage isn't so much a business as a financial and economic construct and a legal one. So businesses are financial and economic constructs that are legally binding. That's what businesses are, definitively speaking. So there's that. So we're going to hit play.
Close, because then we're going to say, well, we can buy stock with that. What are we doing? Like, that's crazy. So we just don't move like that. If she want to buy me something, she just buys it. I mean, it's because we know we have a account for all the money that we spend. And so she'll use one of the cards. If it's the credit card, typically we try to use stuff that's going to be, we can write off on a business. So we don't try to use our personal expenses. We try to make everything a business expense. I believe you should run your marriage like a business, period. Because you get the greatest benefits being married in America. A lot of people don't realize that, but being married is like a money-making machine when you do it right. So we run our marriage like a business, and I'm the CEO and CFO. So
hey, check this out. So in other words, you're not really paying all the bills if the money's going to one pot. You're both paying bills, correct?
Yes. Team Crawford pays the bills.
Okay.
Team Crawford pays the bills.
I just wanted to make sure. I just wanted to clarify that. that.
Again, my wife is a doctor, and she gets paid well. I'm a retired officer. I get paid well, and I run business. So we both combine do very well, but we have no concept of who makes more, none of that nonsense. We're a team. All money comes to the team, and the CEO has to design a plan.
Which is the
for
man,
the
I guess
business.
what you're saying, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Now, I think one other way women can submit to men would be a man that's teaching a woman. You have to teach a woman how to elevate or help her elevate. We as men, we tend to want to, in order to learn a trade or to learn a master class or something like that, we must submit to the person that's teaching us or submit to the instructor. So I think a woman could appreciate a man that's trying to elevate her instead of a man that's trying to dictate her. Am I right, fellas?
I love that
I
he's
can agree with that.
Absolutely. I can
Yeah.
agree with that too.
Yeah, most
I
definitely.
mean, they should, but they don't.
There we go, Philip. We got Philip talking. Go ahead, Philip.
Listen, let's call it what it is. I mean, y'all are saying a lot of really nice stuff that, goes on Hallmark cards and crap like that. But I mean, let's look at just how things are, not how we wish they were. How are they?
Right.
We should be able to provide women with guidance and leadership, but they always buck the system. Not all you ladies, so don't beat up the comment section. But a lot of y'all, just saying.
A lot on what?
They, so like you're saying, the master class, you submit to the instructor, you submit to sensei if you're trying to learn whatever, whomever. But they have a negative connotation on submitting and allowing someone to provide them with guidance and leadership, I think personally, because they think they're losing a sense of their own individuality.
So I was waiting on that. There we go. Now let's talk about this, okay? Many of you men in the comments right now have mentioned that earlier, and throughout the whole conversation, that's your reference point. That's kind of what your belief system is shaped around. That's fine. So let's talk about that. So a man who is willing to submit, a man who is willing to learn from another, a man who is curious about life and allows life to be his teacher, a man who is a person who is, he's smart enough to avoid the catastrophes of life and financial incongruence and irresponsibility and things like that, is a man to be admired. And not only that, women are very likely to submit to that kind of man, because what it says is that she will be protected, but she will always be provided for, which is very important. It's very important. And a woman needs to know that she can definitely trust the man that she decides to yield to as the person who has the ultimate authority in their relationship. That doesn't mean that she loses her sense of self, right? A woman who has all of these insecurities around differentiation in relationships and individuation, that woman still needs help. She still needs therapy. She still needs to be, calibrated. And that's fine. We need that, right? She's not ready for marriage, though. That's the most important thing. The man who has the mindset that all women are like this, right? He still needs help. He still needs therapy. He needs to still be calibrated. And so we need to understand that in calling a thing, we need to recognize if that thing is a thing for us. That's the most important part. You don't lose your sense of self when you tether yourself in a relationship. You become interdependent and you learn how to lean and depend on those things that play to your strengths and not your weaknesses. You learn how to elevate. That's what marriage does for you. That's what marriage can do. That's what healthy relationships do for you in general. So if we are people who understand our culture, if we are people who are trying to define what it means to be a Black American person in this country, we are people who understand that our culture has been given to us. It's been mapped out for us. We just decided to divest from it. That's what it is. We need to get back to reshaping our understandings, get back to doing the work that it takes for us to maintain those healthy dynamics and continue to expand upon those. We need to do that work. And that comes from understanding that we need to submit to a higher consciousness. Whatever our spirituality, back then religion is what was a huge construct of of Black and brown people, melanated people. If that doesn't work for you, understand that a higher power exists for all of us somewhere deep within. We have to find where we are congruent on that one thing. We have to find out what motivates us, what gets us up in the morning, what keeps us in spaces where we know that we are currently underneath water, but we intend to rise above, right? There is a construct within you that says that faith, hope, that doesn't die. And so we have to do things that position us to rise above our odds and to overcome the obstacles in a way that allows us to reseat ourselves in a greater capacity when we're done with that piece. Okay. So submission is a part of life in every facet. That's what I want to get through to you guys. And sometimes we have to understand that people will not always do what it is we want them to do, but we still have to learn how to work with those people because we feel that they are so much important to our overall gain that we cannot afford to divest from those people, those energies. Okay. So I invite you guys to be curious. I invite you guys to do your self-work. I invite you guys to grow, to elevate your game, if you will. Okay. Reposition yourself in life because you're not done yet. Nobody's done yet. We're still all living and breathing. You're fighting through a pandemic, and I know things look rough. I know numbers and cases look difficult. I know that the odds look rough, but I know that you also can gain ground in this space right now. There are opportunities that otherwise would not have been available for you, right? If you've lost people recently, my condolences for your losses, because I know people are losing folks so frequently now. It's almost like you lose another family member every month. And sometimes we can be desensitized to that process. Be permissive with yourself. Allow yourself to feel. Allow yourself to be reseated and grow into congruence to where you align yourself with your higher purpose in life and realize that the deaths of your loved ones don't dictate what your outcomes will be. And so you have something that you have to fight for. Stability, redefining, regaining ground, and reseating yourselves in your greatness. So I love the fact that you guys shared a lot today. Thank you so much. Shout out to the chat for being so involved. I feel like in my final thoughts, I want to say that, you know, throughout all of these conversations, different people have contributed differently to the overarching theme or mindsets of young Black Americans. And we have to be people to understand the impact that we are pushing onto the consciousness of and the energy center of young Black people. We have to be people to understand that as content creators. And I think that we need to be more positive. I think we need to seat ourselves around positive people, and we need to stop pushing all of the negative content that we do, because the negative content is soaked up and absorbed and then sought after by these young people more frequently than positive energy, because I think that people have learned how to keep themselves in a cycle of depression, a cycle of incongruent behaviors and undesired behaviors for society. And it's almost like you want to not accept these kinds of things in society, but at the same time, we welcome it by turning a blind eye. So it is definitely my intent. And I want to be very intentional to walk in my purpose every single day. And my purpose is to elevate, educate, and to contribute to the consciousness of Black people, brown people, melanated people, all people alike, in their journey to healing and also to growth and maturation. So hopefully I have done that by reviewing this video with you guys and sitting through and having this conversation with you guys. Please continue to do your research, continue to seat yourself in greatness, and understand that if you do not have the capacity currently to contribute in a positive way to the energy center of a person that is connected to you, please, please, please don't be a negative impact. If you can't add anything positive to the situation, walk away altogether and allow those people to be in their peace. So that is pretty much all that I have. I want to say shout out to the chat again. I really, really thank you guys for all of your time and your patience throughout this show. I went a little bit over 2 hours, but hey, I'm human. That's all I got, you guys. If you've not already liked, subscribed, shared the content, do so now. Absolutely love you guys. Take care. Be well. Keep yourself tethered.
Who alive can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I whip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bunny. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. Phenomenon.